I don't know if you saw that Kevin Spacey interview, but a pretty powerful interview with Piers Morgan. He broke down in tears in the wide-ranging chat that they had. Two-time Oscar winner opening up about his fall from grace amid multiple sexual assault allegations, as well as his feelings about beating those allegations in both criminal and also in civil cases as well. Let's have a listen.
Where do you live now?
Well, it's funny you asked that question, because this week, where I have been living in Baltimore, is being foreclosed on. My house is being sold at auction.
Really?
So I have to go back to Baltimore and put all my things in storage.
Really?
So the answer to that question is, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to live now.
I mean, are you facing bankruptcy?
Been a couple of times when I thought I was going to file, but we've managed to sort of dodge it, at least as of today.
How much money do you have?
None.
Really?
Well, I mean, you know, you have some sense of legal bills.
Yeah.
I still owe a lot of legal bills that
You're
I have not been able to pay.
You're actually in debt.
Yes.
Do you mind me asking how much you owe?
It's considerable.
Millions?
Many millions, yes.
So apparently he's in a bad way. But is an interview like that likely to garner sympathy for him? Let's speak to Bev Lyons, showbiz reporter. How are you, Bev?
Afternoon to you. Wow. I tell you what, I'm still trying to make sense of that whole interview, as I think many of us will. There were so many different things that came through on this, and you're asking whether it garners sympathy. It also raises questions. We heard so many different things in there. Would you like me to tell you about some of them?
Yeah, please.
Okay, well, I mean, for one of the points that many of us picked up on today through headlines is the fact that he admitted to being too handy. Now, this is a man who has been cleared in the courts, and we always go by the mantra of, you know, innocent until proven guilty. And he has, as you said, been cleared both civil and criminally in the courts. But he has now said to Piers Morgan, you know, yeah, I was too handy, explaining that he was very, very, very bad behaviour at times. By saying that, he was then asked what groping. He said something a bit gentler than that, a bit more along the lines of a seductive way. But that still then raises questions of an invasion potentially of people's space. And I think that he said, you know, at the time he wasn't aware of that, but this is something. So again, this is something that's going to raise questions. Who are these people?
Indeed. And in fact, we can, Bev, have a listen specifically to that point where he responded to that issue of, well, you know, how far did or does this man go when it's unrequired? Let's have a look.
You yourself, as you did a few minutes ago, you talk about bad behaviour that you committed. What do you mean by that? What's your idea of bad behaviour when you look back at what you were doing?
Pushing the boundaries.
In what way? I mean,
being too handsy, you know, touching someone sexually,
groping people
in a way that I didn't know at the time they didn't want. Yeah.
Some people would say that that is criminal. That if you grope people in a sexual way against their wishes, that is a crime.
I agree that the word grope is a very odd word. I personally, I have caressed people. I have been gentle with people. That is the way that I am. You're making a pass at someone. You don't want to be aggressive. You want to be gentle, and you want to see if they're going to respond positively. So I think the word itself is not a word that I associate with my experience.
But would you say all of that was consensual, or was it an attempt at seduction that, if it was repelled, by definition becomes, I guess, non-consensual? That if you're being handsy, if you're groping people, and
Well,
they don't want to do it.
Then they should let you know they don't want to do it so that you can understand it's non-consensual and stop.
Here's the thing, Bev. You know, I always thought that grabbing somebody's genitals was not a good thing to do, you know, in a bar or wherever. But apparently, if you're gentle about it, that's a whole different ballgame, according to Mr. Spacey. It's an extraordinary reply.
I know it's not a funny matter at all. It's a very serious
No, it
matter.
isn't. But the answer is, you know, it does come with some sort of, you know, extraordinary mouth open moments there.
Yeah, it's that definitely raised questions. I know that Kevin Spacey says at the end of this that he is currently and continuously having conversations with the people who he allegedly did this with. But the question also that rises there is, are there people that maybe he hasn't been in contact with who suffered from those approaches? And I guess this is where we see a man who is, as we say, he is very much innocent until proven guilty. But it's one of these, will other people now crawl out of the woodwork? Or is this going to be the corner that indeed Kevin Spacey says he's turned? I mean, that was just one of the things that arose from that interview. We also found out that, of course, he was on the same plane with President Clinton as appears to have been Epstein's jet as they went on a sort of mission to explore HIV, I think to Africa and beyond, and that there were young girls on this jet. And he said rather solidly, you know, that he was not friendly with Epstein, and that, you know, he met him very briefly, sort of very watered down, in a very watered down way. But he has obviously brought into this whole conversation the fact that Clinton was on this jet with him. There were young girls. It was Epstein's jet. And again, this is also raising questions once more.
Well, I was talking before I'd seen that second clip there about him being handsy. I had thought, you know, he's found not guilty in civil and criminal proceedings on both sides of the pond. I thought that I can't, whatever people might think or speculate, there's clearly no reason then that this man can't go back to work. They could make another House of Cards tomorrow and he should be in it because legally and in a civil, he's done nothing wrong. He should be allowed to get back in there under the Hollywood spotlight, A-lister status, reapplied to him, and off he goes. But now he said that, I mean, that's kind of, he's just said I'm a self-confessed sex offender, right? I can't dress that up any other way.
It doesn't sound great, does it? And I think he's done himself a disservice by saying that, although this interview, as Piers promised, was to be, you know, a forensic look at Kevin Spacey and warts and all. And what Kevin Spacey is saying is, you know, he's done the rehab now. He is facing his demons. He's confronting the past. He's telling it all. He's telling from his abusive childhood all the way through to the fame and what has happened in the past. And he feels that he's turning a corner now because he's had therapy. And he said, this will never happen again. I know that we cannot change our pasts. You know, I know that he is concentrating very much on the present and hoping for a better future. But yeah, you know, how real do we want our celebrities to be and how honest do we want them to be? Perhaps had he not told that, we would have had a better image of him by the end of that interview. Now, I'm not sure where we go with this.
Indeed. Well, listen, Bev, thank you for your time. Bev Lyons, showbiz reporter with us. I find that last clip extraordinary. I don't know how you... you know, I have work in this, not just working in this industry. When I was about 20, you know, I met blokes like that, and I'm aware of blokes like that would go. You know, you're not talking. Look, somebody making a pass at somebody is a very different thing, and a pass being what? You know, I really like you. You want to come out for a drink? You know, somebody goes for a dance somewhere back in the day. They try to have a crafty snog at the end of it. Oh no, didn't want that. I mean, you could argue that's a slightly different thing. Somebody grabbing your bits and pieces, I'm sorry, that's a whole different ballgame. And, you know, holding you, grabbing you, you know, holding on to you, insisting. And I know that women get this in horrendous forms and with far more regularity than most blokes. But blokes like that, I've definitely met blokes like that. I can promise you. And it, you know, that's not a pleasant thing for somebody to, you know, steam in thinking it's all fair game. And it doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight, by the way. That's irrelevant to the equation here. And it's just not how you should be doing business as a human being, right? And I don't remember a time, I'm sure there was a time people wouldn't prosecute it. There was a time some people wouldn't take you seriously. But I don't ever think there was a time when it was okay, when the person on the receiving end went, oh, that's all right. It's 1972. I'm perfectly happy with you trying to go for my backside or my genitals or whatever. No, I don't think that was fair. 82, 92, doesn't matter when it was. And I know that people are handsy and over-flirty, but being over-flirty is very different to being handsy, right? Being over-flirty, and you might say, bit of a creep. They're always giving me that eye thing, you know. They lean in a little bit too much, and that might be undesirable. But, you know, frankly, it's a bit different from somebody grabbing your winkle. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. And I think we can all agree that if somebody did that, if somebody did it to you now, you'd turn around and sock them one, wouldn't you? But lots of people aren't in that position. If you're a young actor and he's the director of the play, or you're in a bar. We used to see this guy, by the way, in a bar. He used to run the Old Vic, remember, which is just down the road from where we are now, nearer to our old Talk Sport base. You know, so he drank around that neck of the woods. It was always a bit weird, you know, this massive Hollywood A-lister. You know, spot him in Londis buying a Mars bar was always a bit strange. But that would happen a fair bit down there. But, you know, he'd also go on the prowl. And if you worked for him, you'd feel vulnerable. And if he touched you up, you probably said nothing at all. I reckon that happened on more times than even he would be able to remember. So I don't imagine him now going back onto the Hollywood Hall of Fame anytime soon. Filthy old goat.